Hello world, it's Dave again, and I got another review for you here today for the, what is it called? The Void Trilogy by Peter F. Hamilton, and the second book in the series, which is the Temporal Void, or Temporal Void, whatever you want to call it. This series takes place in the Commonwealth universe, and the Commonwealth universe was first created in the two books Pandora's Star and Judas Unchained by Peter F. Hamilton, the same author. It's not a collaborative author effort that goes on with these books, it's all him. And they're really, really fascinating, first off, because he imagines universes very, very distant in the future. And, so it's not just like a speculative fiction where it's a little bit in the future, it's ridiculously far in the future. And it's kind of gone exponentially so with each series that he's written, the Commonwealth series being placed 300 years in the future, and then you have the now Void trilogy taking place over 1,000 years in the future. And so the ideas in this book, the people in this book talk about the people who are 300 years in the future being medievalists, and these were people who could travel and live on different stars. And so you can imagine the scale of what he's imagining is just out of this world, literally. And it was an amazing read. It was really, really good. It flows in the traditional Peter F. Hamilton way, where he's dealing with amazingly complex ideas, but they're really digestible. They just flow off of the page. It's not, how would I call it, awkward writing for dealing with such complexity. It really flows, like I say. The things that I would say I would particularly enjoy, because I don't want to go into the plot too much. I just want to give like a reason to enjoy this book. Two big things that I found is that you have a trilogy, and so you would expect that the second book in a trilogy would have good rising action. You're going to have peaks and valleys, obviously, but you would want good rising action in the second book, and that's exactly what he has. When all the characters have been established, the action begins to rise in the second book and just delivers through the whole way through. It's clockwork pacing. I've never seen such excellent pacing in a book in terms of rising action. Second to that, and probably most enjoyed in the book, I almost take for granted how well he paces his action, but what I really enjoyed was that this universe has begun in the Commonwealth series, and there are characters, because of the technology that was available in the two books prior to this trilogy, that they were already able to live forever, and you have characters that, if they don't die, if they don't suffer a complete body loss, and these like crystals that house their memories aren't lost, they can continue living. And in this book you then have characters, not all of them from the previous two, but you have a couple characters that have continued, some of the most significant from the initial two books. And this is another workshop in character development where you get to really see a master of the craft go through the steps of developing a character, having them change, have the impacts of everything that they've been involved in the course of their adventure really come to bear on the decisions that they make as they progress through the story. And that's really, really fascinating. One character particularly, and this is when I can talk a little bit about the plot, is called Polomio. This is just to pique your interest if you haven't looked at anything in the series, so maybe with this character you might consider all of them just for her. Her name's Polomio, and she comes from this planet called New Haven, and it was one of these startup planets where when humans were spreading out into the stars, there were a number of different, you can imagine, different political leanings when somebody starts a new planet, and different social setups that people are going to try on different planets. And the people who started New Haven were these people who believed that if you had a genetic predisposition to something, that you would naturally and happily go about that kind of lifestyle. And the way that politics worked around this planet was that a lot of people outside of this planet thought that was reprehensible. It was a horrible way to treat the human spirit, and so they wanted to free people and show them that if they freed them from this environment, that they would not just do the thing that they were genetically tailored to do, that they would have a free spirit like the rest of humanity, and they would go on to do whatever it was that just became an interest. And so what they did is this heist on the planet. They steal some of the embryos. They steal some of the babies from the planet. This terrorist group, if you want to call it that, steals these babies, and they raise these kids outside of New Haven to eventually reveal to the world that they've raised them outside. They become independent and look that New Haven is really this travesty. You know, it's horrible. Human nature shouldn't be treated in this way. And Paula Mio, this character that you get to follow through the whole series, is one of these babies. And the strange thing about her is that she grows up, but she's a really rare instance in their culture where there's people do different sort of tasks and they're genetically programmed for them. But she was predisposed to be a police officer or a detective, and believed, you know, all these different tweaks to her personality that made her really uncompromising when it came to justice and what was right and wrong. And when she finds out that her parents, her not actual parents, but these people who have been raising her, aren't actually her actual parents from the planet that she was originally going to be raised on, she turns them into the authorities. And it's kind of this weird case where it's not that New Haven was bad. It was that when these people were genetically predisposed to do something, that she actually wanted to do that. And then they kind of felt like, well, they couldn't have the right to say that she shouldn't do what she wants to do. And New Haven, in this case, was proven to have a social model that could actually work. And this, you know, goes against kind of a lot of our traditional understanding of a free human spirit. But if you're happy and pre-genetically disposed to do something, it turns out, at least in the way that he tells this story, that she wanted to do it, and she couldn't live with herself to have these people get away with what they'd done, even if they'd raised her. So she turns them in, and you find that she's really a character at odds with that. As much as she thinks and has to act in that predisposed way that it's the right thing to do, it does have an effect on her. So it's not like she's a one-dimensional character. You know, she's still human. There's a lot of regret to it, but she still feels she has to do it. Now, she is introduced in the Commonwealth series, but exists within this Void trilogy. And now, you know, she's had 1,000 years to get older. And one of the things that she's done is removed some of these genetic markers in her code to stop her being so predisposed to this unbendable way of looking at life. And it's fascinating to see the way in which he writes her with this kind of development in her character, with a more like almost artistic slant, a little less black and white in the way that she treats things. And even in the book, as she's had these changes made, you see the impacts of each event in the book then changing her again. And so, like I say, it's sort of a workshop in character development if you pay attention to her role. And it's really satisfying. It's great to follow her journey along. Like I say, you get the incredible rising action. I've now begun the third book, and it's delivering in just the same way that the first and second had. So it is a fantastic series. If you don't like sci-fi, I think you could like Peter F. Hamilton. If you do enjoy sci-fi, then this is an absolute must-have on your bookshelf if you enjoy that kind of reading. Nobody should miss it if they enjoy this genre already. It's just that good. Things I've mentioned in other reviews is just the incredible technology that he describes, and doesn't just drop it in once. He also develops that over the course of the book, so you get a full-fledged understanding of these really fascinating things that he introduces. It's not just here and gone. Each thing has a real effect on the story, has a real social effect on everything. You can really imagine the world that he's creating, even though it's 1,000 years in the future, and I think that's a really difficult task. And he achieves it. And so it is a fantastic book. I think if you're already reading the first, that you won't need to be sold on the second. But if you find this before any of these books I've mentioned, and I've done reviews for all of them, it should just be an indicator of how good this author is. He's exceptional. And a final note to it, I'll probably say this in each review I've done on this series, these books have been written so recently. I would say within, I think it was like between 2005 and 2010, that he's an author as well who will research the kind of science that's occurring around him as he writes these books, and then try and adapt the ideas that he has in the books, where I think that's really, really good, because then it grants him an even further vision into what, you know, might be possible in the future. If you look at what's cutting edge now, where people, if you think pre-internet, there were a number of people who predicted the internet, but you do have to even get even more creative to come up with ideas. So if you're looking at current science, it really does help you add to that cutting edge of the sort of creativity that you're going to have, and he incorporates that very well. So there you go. Cut this down to 10 minutes. I hope you enjoyed the review. When I finish the next one, I'll be doing it. And then on to a book I'm very excited to read called Watership Down, which it seems everybody's heard of. It's anthropomorphized bunny rabbits. Bunny rabbits treated as though they're human. Everybody knows about it. Really, really famous. And I'm really curious to read it. I'm really excited to do a review on it. Kind of share, what is this mystery? I always hear about this book. What will people think once I've gotten through it? But anyways, thanks for tuning in. If you check out this review, I really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, share to any of your nerdy or otherwise friends who are interested in this kind of thing. And like I like to say, until we meet again next time, world, ciao for now. Thanks for tripping with Dave. Peace.